enjoyed this evening's presentation of the documentary Qassam. We are fortunate to have with us in the studio the producer and director of this documentary, Igal Hecht. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Good. For our viewers, I'm going to try put this in a little bit of context. We've just seen a documentary about homemade missiles that are chucked from Gaza into Israel, into Sderot, the town of Sderot. And basically, it's a group of young men who put together these missiles. We have an image of that, young men who put together these missiles, and basically they're unguided. They don't know where they're coming down, but they send them across the border. Yeah. The important thing is there's not much distance between Gaza and Sderot.
Not at all.
In the image we're showing, Sderot is in the foreground, and in the background is Gaza. And what was it, 300 meters between the two?
Something along those lines, a few hundred meters.
Just a few hundred meters. So basically what you're seeing is two nations, basically, or two different jurisdictions, and you have missiles coming across there.
That's true.
So you shot all of it in Sderot. And
yes, we did,
okay. I guess the question I have for you is, why would you make this particular documentary?
See, Qassam was one of my first documentaries that I made a few years back, and the main reason was the fact that nobody was telling the story of the city of Sderot. The city of Sderot was largely ignored by the world's media. The Israeli suffering there, nobody really cared about. It was also ignored by the Israeli media. In fact, till about 2 years ago, till about 2009, Qassam, my film Qassam, was probably the only film that was made about Sderot. And Qassam was made in 2005 with a little update in 2008. So everybody was ignoring the city. And
why?
You have the Israeli media was ignoring the city because the people who lived there were low-income families, Moroccans, Ethiopians, low-income Russian immigrants who came there. They didn't really have the political clout that other communities and members of Israeli society do. And the intellectuals who live in Tel Aviv didn't really care about this little city.
Seriously?
In my opinion, yes.
Because I was going to ask you that question. I noticed that some of the people, they appear to be Falasha, Ethiopian Jews. Is there a racial context to this thing? I was going to ask you.
I don't, you know, a lot of people have asked me. I don't know. I can't say for certain. I mean, I can't say that for sure that there is, but I would say that the city had before people even started caring about the city had over 3,000 missiles launched upon it, or a few thousand missiles. I'm not sure of the exact numbers, and nobody cared.
Why do they care now?
Because, first, because of the disengagement, the Gaza disengagement, and also because the missiles no longer just fall on Sderot. They fall on the city of Ashkelon, they fall on the city of Ashdod, they fall on Netivot, on Ofakim, on Beersheba, and we're now talking from a city of 30,000 people to over 1 million people that are in the range of the Qassam missiles and the Grad missiles, which are long-range Katyusha missiles, more guided and more pinpointed, that can cause a lot of damage and kill hundreds, if not thousands of people. So
did the advent of Hamas change things? I mean, because before, I mean, now there's a Hamas government throughout the Palestinian territories.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the Gaza disengagement changed everything. The film was shot prior to the Gaza disengagement, and everybody knew that once the disengagement occurred, the more missiles are going to rain down on Sderot and the surrounding areas. So when Hamas took over in 2006, through a very violent coup against Fatah, Israelis started paying more attention. And when it wasn't just one little city with low-income families of Moroccan, Ethiopians, and low-income Russian families, then Israelis started taking paying more attention. And so did the world, to some extent, even though the world doesn't expect Israel to retaliate or defend its citizens, because when they do, they get internationally condemned all the time.
Now, we see in the documentary you captured some internal disunity, let us say. We actually had an image of a very, very angry man, and I tell our viewers, there was a caution about this. We actually included some language which we would not normally include in subtitles, but we felt it was integral to the actual storytelling and the anger and the frustration the people there were feeling. So what is it about the tension that the people who live in Sderot have with the government?
See, back then, in 2004, 2005, and 2006, when they were largely ignored by the government and they were begging the government to bring shelters in areas that could protect them from the missiles, and nobody really cared about them, this caused a lot of tension. They felt that they were casted aside, that nobody really cared, that they weren't important for the state, and if a few missiles rain down upon them, then they should, you know, tough it out. That's what the politician essentially said.
How do you fund a documentary like this? Because you mentioned that it's not a popular topic.
No. Well, I really wanted to make Qassam, and I really wanted to make Qassam because of the death of Dorit Ensu and her cousin, sorry, the 2-year-old and the 4-year-old who passed away from the missile. And nobody wanted to fund it. And basically, I called my producer, Talia Klein, and I said, we have to find some money to get me over to Israel. I didn't have a lot of time to film it, and I made other commitments. And basically, I did a corporate video for somebody. We took that money, and we invested in the film. And I found myself, within 2 weeks, I found myself in Sderot with my camerawoman, Ofri Segev, and we just went out and we just shot the movie.
But somebody obviously had to line up some of those interviews and some of that content. Did you have somebody go in advance of you, or were you doing did you line up all those interviews?
I did some of the legwork, and then I had a great production manager by the name of Ofri Segev and Lital Shachar, who worked with me on the film, who introduced me to the current cameraman I'm working with, Lior Cohen, who I've made about 20 documentary films with in Israel since then.
Yeah. Now, throughout the documentary, I get this, it's a documentary that feels kind of tight and closed in. Yeah. The reason I open with an image of the actual, an aerial view of that area was because in watching the documentary, I felt kind of closed in. Was that something you intentionally did?
Absolutely, because the people of the road feel closed in. Anywhere they go, anywhere they sleep in, anywhere they go, missiles fell upon them in the market, in their homes, on their streets, on their schools, on their kindergartens. And again, nobody cared. And this was their feeling. From a city that used to have 27,000 people, people have said that the numbers have dwindled to 15 to even 12,000.
What's the circumstance right now at the moment?
It's a little bit better, because the ironic thing of it all, since Hamas took over and has been launching over 10,000 missiles on Israel, they've sort of stopped launching missiles on Sderot, because Sderot is a small target now. Now they've advanced to Ashdod, which has 250,000 people, to Ashkelon, that has 200,000 people, to Beersheba. So Sderot is sort of now being left alone, and they're happy, but everybody else around them is getting missiles rained down upon them.
Are they still homemade missiles, the Qassams?
Qassams have now been, some of them are homemade. But the choice of the current Palestinian terrorist in Gaza is no longer Qassams, rather Grad missiles, because they can pack them in with more shrapnel and nails and explosive, and they cause much more damage.
And these are not being directed at military targets or civilian targets?
Only civilians. It's like playing Russian roulette. They send the missiles. They don't care where it lands. They hope it lands in a populated area, and they just send it. They leave it on an alarm clock. They send it, and they hope it kills as many Israelis as they possibly can.
You obviously have some passion for the subject matter. Identify that for us.
The passion comes from the fact that I live in that area. My family and friends live in the area of Sderot, the area of Ashkelon, and the area of Ashdod. I have lots of family there, and I couldn't stand the fact that nobody cared about these people. That in the eyes of many in the Canadian media, the suffering of Israelis was legitimate, it was warranted, and in fact, you know, the Israelis deserved it in the eyes of many. And if people really ignored a city that has been shelled by over 10,000 missiles for a period of 8 years, is largely ignored by the world. And when the government finally takes action and wants to defend these citizens, the world tells it, no, you can't. You can't.
Yeah, and the other thing is these people are all non-combatants. You make that very clear. These are people living day-to-day lives, civilians.
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, I'm not saying that what's happening in Gaza is great. In Israel, you know, closed off Gaza, so did Egypt, and people forget that. Yeah. But the reason, one of the main reasons, was the fact that when Israel was allowing construction material to go into Gaza, Hamas would take that, siphon it, and would create bombs out of it. They would create the material that Israel allowed to come in, and they would create bombs out of it to be sent over into Israel and kill Israeli citizens. So, I mean, it's tragic what's happening to the Palestinian people in Gaza, who are not affiliated with Hamas, who have to live under these horrible, fundamentalist, terrorist laws. But at the same time, you know, it's unbelievable. The world ignores what over 1 million Israelis are now going through. What
really, I guess, crystallized it for me was that moment when one of your subjects turns to you and says, "Do you hear that?"
Yeah.
That was a Qassam. You must have thought as a filmmaker, oh my goodness, I caught it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And back then, Hamas wasn't posting images on YouTube. Now, if you want to just see that, you can just grab it off YouTube from their website. But yeah, back then it was something unbelievable. We're in the middle of filming, and all of a sudden, just goes off. And you saw his reaction. It was basically, oh yeah, another one fell.
Another one's coming in. Yeah. Hear that? Hear another one coming.
And this is their daily reality.
Listen, when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about something perhaps a little more cheerful.
Absolutely.
We're going to look at your Musica project, which is about Israeli musicians. Yes. Please stay with us. We'll be back after the break.